5. That night, we get a job from Optorn Graxoltek, a goblin chief a few days outside of the city, near another territory that we don't want to talk about. You'd think I might be much more interested in getting out of Salicomb, but it is dangerous around us in the Underdark. It is a decent possibility that Grax and his tribe went after Grigar, but that isn't our problem. Optorn found the request from the goblin, after going through old jobs, that should have been done by now. You'd think I might get a little variety in the things that call for us? Well, likely because so many have their own magical healing, and monsters call on services like ours, because rubbing dirt in a wound doesn't actually stop profuse bleeding. Also, goblin shaman aren't so big on healing, more hurting, if their casting works at all. Grax is a fat goblin chief, who has been lying to his people, about being muscular and powerful, but is over 100 goblins who fight for him, fall for it. For now, we are set to head off soon. Evete, my loving clerical sister, reassures me that she'll know if I pray or not while I'm out. While traveling, I only have to pray an hour in the morning and late afternoon, instead of the usual amount. It is nice to get out a bit more often. Again, I'm not sure why Lolth would care if I was out and about, in the Underdark, sitting on a mushroom and praying, but it would be that one time that she was paying attention, and expected it of me. Sheesh, the gods are complicated. He might slightly care enough to call me out to the family if I am praying how they would call correctly, but I'm thinking we have a decent enough rapport. He doesn't tell the family I don't put all the pressure on my knees during prayer. I don't tell the family that he steals from clients, when they don't notice. A sort of gentleman's agreement. They truly wouldn't care about the client, or family customer service, but since he wasn't cutting the family in, they might have something to say. Yup, and I got our gear ready, and we're off that next morning. I make a quick stop at Optorn's place, to see if I am lucky enough, for someone to have turned in some weapon they won't need, but I am not so lucky. Starting off when going to Grax's place, we had to exit the family territory, and Salicomb, through a hole in the ground so that we could avoid one of the paths of a great Underdark worm that eats through rock, and its hunting path is something that the families track so that they aren't in its way. To kill something that large, would mean that a few of the Salicomb families would have to work together, and that just does not happen. Slipping through the lesser used exit, always seems strange, often because few use the exit, and seeing someone else is often a surprise, hoping that neither of you are there to poke someone in the back with sharp objects. I know it might sound strange, but since I'm awesome, and can help us survive with a spell, we actually put small parts of our food rations, near the entrance to our hiding spots most times, when we have to rest. One of us keeps watch, but when the other is awake, you don't know how hard it is to stay that way. There is no wind, creaking mushroom boards, weather, any sound made by another is like a scream. Every hunter is quiet, every move is calculated, and if someone is quiet enough to come close, you can let them have some of your food if they are starving. We don't just put a tiny bit, but a small bowl full of mushrooms that most things use to survive. Sometimes some filling moss as well, but it often depends. The first rest time that night, I get pushed awake when Yup isn't paying attention, until some things got close. We had picked a wrong small hole to hide in and rest after getting really worn out from a recent climb. One of the usual tunnels had caved in. A little group of 9 rat creatures had their beady little eyes looking at me when I wake up after a shove. 3 of them licked the bowl clean quickly but were still looking at us like we are a decent meal, as were the others that couldn't fit their face in. My finger wiggling is covered by Yup, as I cast the spell. We were lucky I could cast slowly, and not too loudly without scaring them. The paste that my magic forms is not tasty, but it is filling, and a good bit of it. Luckily I could also get the spell off, while still tired. I finish the spell and the globs of plain paste appear in our designated bowl that we bring with us. Yup and I get a small share, and stay hungry. The little annoying critters who get my morning meal, push each other out of the way to get their snouts in and take a bigger share than they probably needed, but all of them were easily full as they keep their distance and leave together. This group seems to have done this sort of thing before, but the looks in their eyes look like they would have been happy with throwing themselves at our weapons to take bites at us. They leave, supposedly happy with the magic food filling their bellies. We are more happy that they didn't try to attack us. Even rats in the depths are deceivingly dangerous. I note that, because when we leave our hidey hole, a big rat-looking creature, looking like a wolf did naughty things with a rat, walks towards us. Its emaciated body is skin and bone, and it has 6 smaller rats clinging to its fur. From Yup.
Can't you talk to animals, or something like that?
Answering back. What, can't you talk to animals or something? You leave the spell stuff to me, you do the hurting things. Besides, that is no animal, it would be a monster. You certainly don't insist that I gain a few levels so that I can memorize another spell or two, to learn how to talk to things like this. It looks hungry enough, that we get a couple of handfuls of our food that we have for a couple of days, and drop to the ground in our bowl, and back away. The wolf rat sniffs at it, and drools into the bowl, continuing on to what it seems to consider a real meal. Us. Yup takes out his sickle and half-staff, I pull out my boring smith hammer. The wolf realizes we are a little more complicated than a simple meal, and lunges at us. As it lunges, 3 of the creepy rats that were clinging to its fur, jump off, crawl around us, and a few others crawl to its top. As Yup slices the smaller rat's tail off, and I bash another to a squishy pulp, the wolf bit down on Yup, and a rat bites me. That wolf did some serious damage in one good bite to him. The rat bite was to my shin and hurt a bit, but could be worse, hopefully not some disease from down here. With my luck, we'll need to do some disease healing after all of this. Yup takes his bite like a champ, and since there were a few targets, wanted to show off and take 2 within a few seconds. He saw a bite coming to the side and he shoved his half-staff in its mouth, forcing it open, but also slicing along its back to take another rat off. The rat ducked, but his sickle took out a chunk of its hump and it fell off. The other 2 rats jump off, and the other bites down harder on my shin, and shakes a bit to try to tear off some muscle. A grunt escapes my lips but my shin holds without tearing. Slamming down on its back with my hammer, parts of it break and it hits the ground. The wolf was unable to bite through Yup's staff, but hops back and coughs a bit, recovering. The wolf rat slowly moves its head left and right, seeing the flexibility of his enemy. Yup follows its head with his half-staff. As one rat jumps the gun and gets closer, he swipes quickly to the ground with a loud clang on the rock, slicing the rat in half. The larger monster darts forward to try for another bite. It feigns an attack to one side of his gut, and aims lower to a leg, biting down, and making Yup grunt from the pain. Big tough guy showing off, shows the toughness of elf warriors. Hitting the side of the larger rat creature gets my hammer caught a little in its fur, and it is hard for me to tell if I even bruised it at its neck. It didn't whimper at all, not even a yelp. Figuring that Yup can work on the creature more easily, I chase after the last rat that is trying to bite the both of us again. His sickle catches under the wolf rat's maw and catches some matted fur and skin, but can't dig in for more. We can see its muscle under that and its dark blood, drops to the rock. Of course all of our blood is dark down here. Finding the rat trying to hide behind a stone, I swing for it, grazing the rock a bit, and smack the rat out of its hiding place. A screech tells me it realizes that it wasn't hiding as well as it thinks, and it scurries away, its tail drooping along the ground. Yup takes another swing at the creature, catching its ear and ripping it off. Its growl feels more of its starvation over its fear. It needs to eat, or it will be dead anyway. It bites Yup's arm that is holding his sickle, but his protective bracer, one of the few pieces of armor he has, doesn't let its teeth break through. For my bit, I rush over to my guard, and heal him. I'm not sure how much, or how bad he was, but it does some good. It is what I do, right? His different wounds scab over, where I can see it through holes in his armor. The wolf rat drools more, and snaps at Yup again, its mind screaming at it to run, but its stomach demanding satisfaction. In survival mode, it is in a losing battle, especially now, and still losing blood. Another heal had very little of my magic left, and Yup wasn't fully healed, but he'll make it unless it takes his face. With an attempt to do just that, it lunges again for Yup's face, but he twists his body to the side and it misses both of us. As it passes, my guard drags his sickle along the monster between its legs, opening up a gash in its body. When it lands close by, it slows down, noticeably hurt, but still on its 4 legs. We could finish it off next, if I boosted my hammer's damage with psionics, but our danger was much less, and we could finish off this thing in a few seconds. With its new wound, the rat creature alone after losing its friends, its mind cools, swiveling its head between its options of us and the exit to the side. Its mind switches between fight or flight, and it chooses flight. It screeches in anger, some natural effect that makes Yup stagger back, but I stand my ground as it leaps to the way home that it knows. My hammer flies through the air since it jumps out of my reach, but the handle bounces off of its hide and hits the ground. These aren't exactly made to throw. As quickly as it can, it limps away from us for the few seconds that it has, before we can get things together. Walking over to the hammer, and picking it up off of the ground, I take a few more steps down the cave to finish it off. Yup grabs the back of my leather armor, and pulls back a bit. He suggests,
"This thing is ours, and we won't get a thing from these rats. Let's see if this thing takes us home.
I smile at the suggestion. With its blood soaking the rock and earth along the way, we follow it slowly and carefully. Any other beast can follow this same trail. With the adrenaline down, and it can likely feel the pain it is in, since it doesn't have someone awesome like me to help it, it limps into another area. As we walk along, there are small creature bones. Since I have not seen so many creature bones I can't tell, but some even look like humanoid bones, all gnawed through, broken apart, and the marrow picked clean. It isn't a large den, but big enough for it and its mate, another creature like it, on the ground. As we walk along, there are small creature bones. Since I have not seen so many creature bones I can't tell, but some even look like humanoid bones, all gnawed through, broken apart and the marrow picked clean. It isn't a large den, but big enough for it and its mate, another creature like it, on the ground. Hearing its mate whimpering in, and dragging a foot along the ground, it gets up, and starts to lick its wounds. We come up as quietly as we can, but with my fat feet, I slap a boot against the rock wall nearby, and the mate looks up, growling. Yup looks back at me, having heard the boot too, and growls in the back of his throat too. I shrug my shoulders in apology and don't whisper as I say, "You sound just like it. Did you get your growling lessons from one of these things?" With our weapons ready, it looks back at its mate, and runs towards the back of the cave. We chase it and along the way, other smaller rats join it on its flight. There is another exit at the back of the cave. Nothing comes after us when we find it. The den is abandoned by the rat monster, and its brood. We walk back to the pitiful wolf rat, it not lasting much longer, heavily bleeding on its home floor. It looks up at us with fear in its dulling eyes. Yup doesn't hesitate for a second.
You, or us.
Driving his sickle through its skull. Looking around, the little things were collectors. We find 13 copper, 2 silver, and with what looks like a miner's bones, a mining pick that looks in pretty good shape. I have only a little magic left, and have to reserve it, but Yup has no objection to me taking the pick.
This thing will at least give you something to break through a weak hide like that. Are you kidding me during that fight?
I told you, if we find others from ours and nearby cities, a basic smith's hammer might be okay, but we are lucky we haven't found anything more serious. I am a healer, not a fighter. He comes up closer to me.
All elves are fighters down here.
I answer. Well, as you can tell, I'm no elf.